Good evening. So glad all of you could join us tonight for the August 12th, 2024 meeting at the Westerville City School Boards of Education. This evening's agenda will be displayed on the screens in the front of the room. Printed agendas are available for our guests at the back of the room, or you may find the agenda on your mobile device by connecting to the district's website at www.wcsoh.org. Click on our district link, select Board of Education, and follow the board docs link to our current meeting agenda. There will be two opportunities to address the board this evening, the first being agenda item 6.01. The first set of comments is relative to agenda items 7.01 through 11.01. Please state the agenda items you are referencing at the beginning of your comments. The second opportunity is agenda item 12.01. There's a sign-up sheet located on the table in the back of the room. Each speaker will have 5 minutes to address the board. A timer will be shown on the screen. And with that, Ms. Marshall, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Davidson?
Here.
Dr. Nestor Baker?
Here.
Mrs. Valentine?
Here.
Mrs. Altman is absent. Mrs. Meyer?
Here. Would you please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We do not have any district highlights or recognitions tonight. Next up, we have a transportation report, and we welcome Mr. Snyder.
Good evening, President Meyer, members of the board, Ms. Hamburg, Ms. Marshall. It's a pleasure to be here before you this evening to provide a transportation update with where we've been and where we're going this year. So tonight on our presentation itinerary, we're going to talk about 7 things: who we serve, our method in going about serving our students in our community. We're going to go on a trip or two together, and we'll discuss what we do in between routes, what's trending across the country, keeping students in an in-person learning environment, and finally, and the most important, I believe, tonight, is why are drivers choosing to drive for Westerville City Schools. So who we serve. We offer over 10,000 students transportation services a day. That's 20,000 rides a day that we offer our students and community. We serve 25 Westerville City School District buildings, meaning our 3 high schools, 5 middle schools, 15 elementary schools, our preschool program here at the ELC, and the Academic Enrichment Center. We also provide service for 3 career centers, 2 in Columbus and 1 at DACC, 9 private and charter schools, 7 special education service provider locations. This is the number that caught me first. We offer over 2.8 million rides per year, or for those Ohio State fans in the room, that's 32 home Ohio State football games in a year. That's a lot of football. Our method, the way in which we go about doing it, to provide approximately 20,000 rides a day, it takes a 3-tier routing system. The majority of our routes have a high school, middle school, and elementary setup. 116 school buses in the fleet, 98 total school bus routes this year for the 2024-25, 69 Westerville Career Center pairings of some sort. 22 of our routes serve our magnet schools along with St. Paul students and a Westerville City School elementary route. We have 7 dedicated routes serving private and charter schools. Also in our MyVan fleet of 24 vehicles that are assigned to daily transportation services, 21 of those vehicles are our MyVan routes, and there are also 3 spares, serving 28 locations and approximately 180 students. And that program continues to grow each year. We serve over 5,200 school bus stops per day, and approximately 70 regularly scheduled middays between the hours of 9:30 and 1:30. A call out here for our team and our department is the majority of school districts in the state of Ohio, once you get outside of the urban areas, the size of their fleet dramatically drops to many of them 20 or less buses in their entire district. So when you think about Westerville and the number of buses that we have on the road each day between 9:30 and 1:30, in some areas we're triple the amount of total buses they have in their entire fleet. And again, those are our kindergarten middays, our preschool middays, work studies, community outings, modified schedules, etc. So let's go on a trip or two for just a moment. Our school buses and MyVans travel over 8,000 miles per day combined. That's the equivalent of going from New York City to Los Angeles, back to New York City, and back to LA in one day. Over 1.4 million miles per year. That's more than 6 round trips from the Earth to the moon. I think about the Apollo 13 mission and how long it took them to get there and back. We do that in a year, 6 times. Our MyVan fleet travels over 250,000 miles per year. 250,000 miles per year. And I have to highlight that our MyVan program is celebrating its 6th year this fall. That program launched in 2018, and we are starting into our 6th year. And a number of our drivers who are with us today were with us from the beginning 6 years ago. So what about in between our routes? Our team of school bus drivers, MyVan drivers, mechanic technicians, office support staff, and department administrators take part in welcoming over almost 400 people to our first-time riders event earlier this month, participating in over 2,000 combined hours of training and education, all centered around student wellness and safety, as well as our employees as well, supporting approximately 2,000 co-curricular and extracurricular field trips. Noting here that those 2,000 extracurricular and co-curricular trips, many of those trips require more than one driver. For example, a Friday night football game for one school might use 7 to 10 vehicles for that one evening. That's not included in that 2,000 number. Completing 960 preventative maintenance services and over 1,500 work orders each year, keeping our fleet safe for our students and staff. And I want to call out and just a note that the building that we're currently in was renovated and replaced in 2011, about 13 years ago. And our mechanics and our entire department continue to benefit from that investment that the community made in our department back in 2011. We also provide school bus safety training to grades K through 3 and conducting evacuation drills for all students who ride our vehicles. Our drivers and staff, department staffs, also attend school events, sporting contests, award ceremonies, graduations, parades, concerts, and so much more. And those are not always related to the field trips in which they provide for. So what's trending? This is a question that we get often from both community members as well as district leadership. Where are the drivers in Ohio? A nationwide reduction in school bus drivers was presented over 10 years ago. And in Ohio, we've noted the following. In the fall of 2020, there were approximately 25,000 school bus drivers on record with the Department of Education and Workforce, noting that that is not CDLs. That is school bus drivers who are certified by the Department of Education with a pre-service certificate. So then a few years later, in October of 2023, it was noted that there were approximately 18,000 school bus drivers in the state of Ohio, nearly a third of a reduction, if you will, in the workforce in the state. In some areas of the country, the driver shortage is as high as 25%. In some regions, 1 in 4 buses across the country is unstaffed. For the school year for 24-25 here in Westerville, we'll start the year with 6 unfilled positions. 98 bus routes and 5 contracted floaters is 103 total positions. Maintaining an in-person learning experience for our students. So how do we work to keep students in school? Pairing our Magnet and St. Paul students, with that program being an entire district-wide program, we're able to utilize those pairings for Magnets and St. Paul, as well as the elementary pairings that we did 2 years ago with the staggered starts. By combining the Magnet St. Paul program, we were able to bring our elementary buildings back to one bell schedule. So here's a few statistics looking back to the early release, delayed starts, and remote days. In FY23, so the 22-23 school year, we had 23 days with instructional time disrupted. That may have been through early releases at the high school and middle schools. There were a few days where one middle school actually early released 2 hours early. We also had a situation where Genoa Middle School went in what we referred to as remote learning. In the FY24, so this past school year, we had 13 days of disrupted educational or instructional time, noting that we only had to impact the high school and middle schools with the 30-minute, 20-minute early release. So, call out to our team, to our drivers. There was one day in 2023, in the spring of 23, we had over 70 drivers in a single day providing coverage to cover an additional assignment that they don't do on a daily basis. They may have been covering a middle school for another route, a high school for another route, a shuttle between 2 buildings, varies, right? We have an attendance book that we keep track of all of this, and somebody referred to it as either a mosaic or a Van Gogh, depending on the way that you looked at it. Either with something beautiful or something kind of scary, right? So we also introduced this past school year contracted floaters. And that's a position where, like the food service department also adopted recently, it's a position where it's a contracted substitute position. They report each day to cover whatever we need them to cover in the morning and the afternoon. So ultimately, why do drivers choose Westerville City Schools? School bus drivers are choosing to drive for us, and here are just a few of the reasons why. Competitive wages, excellent benefits, we cover all of our upfront hiring costs, paid training. There are several districts in the central Ohio area that still require a driver to obtain their CDL and all of the necessary certifications prior to being on the payroll. We offer the opportunity for our drivers to be paid for their training hours. We've also modified our hiring practices where we allow our CDL trainees to hire on first as our MyVan drivers, whether it be contracted or substitute. That's an easier pathway to immediately become an employee with the district, which also provides those employees an opportunity for experience, if you will, exposure to the district. Where are our schools? Where are the streets? Where are the roads? So it's a pathway to get those drivers onboarded with Westerville sooner. We also have sign-on and recruitment incentive opportunities. We have an award-winning team of drivers. I have to make a shout out to our 8 mechanics and Sean Dawson, who's also in the room, our fleet manager. We have an incredible group of guys who are turning the wrenches and spinning the tires, so to speak, to keep our fleet up and running. And we also have a nationally recognized fleet. Finally, we are working diligently with district leadership and different departments to create a culture of community and a welcoming environment. Last school year, we had 5 drivers leave other districts mid-year to join Westerville. Our drivers are out recruiting for us. They meet others on field trips. They meet others out in the community at dinner and at different events, right? And they talk about us in a positive way. And those individuals say, tell me more. What's going on? We have a website that we send them to. And again, it kind of all goes back to creating a culture of community and a welcoming environment. And speaking of welcoming, earlier this month, this is where I have some fun because it's close to my heart. We have our first-time riders program that celebrated 16 years this year. And when you see some of the students come for the first time to ride a school bus for the first time, it's something special. And what's also special about it is when the parents come along for that first ride. You see a gentleman in the top right corner giving a thumbs up to his son and, taking that first picture. It's a relief to those families. It's a relief to those students. I have to give a shout out, and he's here with us tonight, to Alan Hunt. This is one of his pride and joys when it comes to our every year. His leadership and his dedication and passion for the program is noted. There in the bottom left-hand corner, you see one of our newest secretary dispatchers at the computer. But again, this program, 16 years, it all started because we had families come during the summer and call us and say, my child's never been on a bus. Could you take them for a ride? And myself and a couple of others go out to a bus. They'd get on board and we'd take them around the block. But certainly this program is an amazing thing. And we have a saying in our department for our new students and for our students that are returning. For many of our drivers, they can't wait to meet them later this week. Some of our drivers who have been driving, our senior driver has 41 years of school bus driver experience. She's been doing this a long time. And we look forward to meeting our students later this week.
Randy, I know you have several of your team members
Yes.
here, and I know they like to not always be in the spotlight, but just really appreciate them all coming out tonight. If you could introduce them.
Certainly. From left to right, Bob Line, the Director of Purchasing and Logistics. Transportation is one of his areas. Sean Dawson, I mentioned him earlier, our fleet manager and oversees the fleet as well as the mechanics. Antoine Sidbury is our assistant manager who oversees many aspects of the department, in particular the hiring and training program. Mildred Bauman, who's here toward the front, she oversees our special transportation for students with specialized needs in the MyVan program and some of our other special education programs. Alan, who I mentioned earlier, Alan Hunt, is our student safety liaison. He is our person who works with our building administrators, working on creating environments in our school buses that are safe, encouraging, and nurturing for our drivers and for our staff. And she's here as well. Shar Smith is our local 719 president. She also joined us this evening. And Shar, again, to you and your team, as well as to the entire department. I am proud of the team that I work with day in and day out. So thank you. I'd certainly be happy to entertain any questions or any follow-up.
I don't have any questions, but kudos, well done. I mean, I feel like you took us on a trip. Absolutely. I think it gives the community a really good perspective of really what's happening. I really appreciate all that we're doing to recruit drivers, because we all know that the transportation department, their goal is to get the kids there to school safely and on time and work their tails off. So I am just grateful for all of you, for all that you do. I think you're absolutely amazing. I cannot imagine, like, it's got to be like herding cats all around, and you just do it every day, all day. So well done. Thank you.
I can't say it better than that. But you people are utterly amazing. Every time I drive by that building, I think, stop in and see what it's like. And I think, oh my gosh, I can't measure up in one way to the work that you people do every single day. I am so thankful for every single one of you. And Randy, a big thank you to you, because you were the one who created the MyVan program. You're the one that came up with the idea, and it has proven to be everything that you thought it might possibly be, and much more. But to your drivers, to your team, to everyone, what you do goes far beyond what most people who drive by that building think you do. It's amazing, it's inspiring, it is absolutely part of the mission of what we do here in Westerville Schools. Thanks.
I will echo the sentiments and say thank you. I did have a question. Is this presentation going to be available on the district website?
It's available on board docs, and we can also make it available on our transportation site as well.
Okay. I just think that's super important. You laid this out so well to talk about the number of students you're servicing, the number of routes, because I think when we as parents, we just send our kids to the bus stop and it's like, okay, off they go. It's like the amount of work that goes into on the back end, making sure that all of those kids get to where they need to go safely and in a welcoming environment. It is no short of like a miracle feat. So a lot of parents, you just hear from them probably whenever there's early release or something, because we don't have enough drivers, but to hear about the great work that you all are doing is just phenomenal. So thank you for sharing this with us and the community.
And I would be remiss if I didn't add, too, that a number of our drivers have been working in the district over the summer, preparing our buildings to welcome back students in summer custodial work. They also work throughout the school year in covering half or full shifts sometimes in some of our buildings in cafeteria recess aides or custodial needs. Sometimes they'll substitute or, if you will, fill in at the warehouse. So that is another way that we're also attracting folks to come to drive for Westerville, because we can fill in those gaps sometimes, but also provide support in other areas of the district and the operation. So thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention too, so to that end, my husband picked our daughter up from summer camp at Mark Twain this year, and he was there early, and they were coming back from a field trip, so he was waiting on them to get back, and he talked with one of the summer custodians there, and he went on and on and on about how much he loved his job as being a bus driver in Westerville Schools. He was just working summer custodial work, and just the great leadership and the great team that the transportation department has. And he didn't know who my husband was from anybody, but it was just a conversation. He said, you should really put that guy on a commercial for recruiting, because he loves his job so much. So
Thank you.
I echo all these comments. I know how challenging it must be when we're short drivers. I think of like a war room of lots of spreadsheets of how are we going to fill these spots. So I really do appreciate all that you guys do and how you chip in so many different ways. I have a couple of questions though. One you already answered, so thank you. You had mentioned that there was 6 unfilled positions, but that doesn't, just so people at home know exactly what that means, that doesn't necessarily mean that kids aren't getting to school. They're being filled.
Correct. We work each day to cover those vacancies, whether it be through the contracted floaters or our substitute drivers. We also have drivers who step up each day, and I'll say, they come to the window and say, what can I do today to help? And then we give them those assignments. There are districts, not just across the country, but even here in Central Ohio, I remember some nights they would post on social media, tomorrow bus 123 is not going to be there. If your students ride bus 123, their absence will be excused if you're not able to bring them to school. Other districts will combine routes or run their routes later. One of our strategies with doing the early releases, certainly that's inconvenient and kind of unplanned, but our goal too by doing those early releases at the high schools and the middle schools are so that we're on time to our elementaries and on time to the preschool program. So our smallest, our youngest passengers, if you will, our youngest students had the least disruption to their day, where that routine is really important for them at that age level.
Thank you. I imagine that's pretty stressful as a bus driver too, to make sure that you're getting to all those places that you need to get to. You actually answered my other question, so I have one last one. I know the law mandates we transport kids attending private and charter schools. When we have to do early release, how does that impact them?
Certainly. It doesn't have an impact like we experience. Unfortunately, we're not able to dictate to a private or charter school to adjust their bell schedule due to an early release need. What that allows us, though, is for those drivers who have those routes, our highest number of vehicles in the afternoon are on the road between 2:30 and 4 o'clock. And during that window of time, it's difficult to have those individuals who are driving routes that are not able to be split to cover. So by doing the 30-minute and 20-minute early releases, those drivers who otherwise are driving at 2:30 have an additional hour to assist in covering high schools starting releasing at 1:35 and our middle schools rather starting at 2:20. So by doing that 30-20, they're able to provide more coverage to get our routes covered so that students are able to be transported home according to the early release schedule.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions, but I just really want to reiterate again, thank you all for all your work. It is so needed, and really appreciate everything you guys do.
Thank you.
Thanks for the presentation.
My pleasure. Our pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have a presentation on extracurricular sportsmanship, and I'm going to welcome Ms. Yanni, Ms. Boss, and Mr. Lewis. Thank you.
Good evening, President Meyer. Good evening, members of the board, Superintendent Hamburg, and Mrs. Marshall. We are very excited to come tonight and talk with you about We Are the Ville and our sportsmanship campaign. So, why sportsmanship? Why now? What's going on? It's across the nation. It's across the world. We were actually able to see fantastic sportsmanship in this past week or so with the Olympics, and this event only just really added to all of that spirit. It truly did. But the need, it started with concerns. So whether it is environment at our games, and we've had situations at some of our games that we've had to work through, it is the impact on our students, and we're going to unpack that here in a moment, as well as referee shortage. Many of the people in the room may not know that we do have a high referee shortage, not just here in Ohio, across the nation. They're trying to increase how many referees that we are bringing in, as well as some of our games sometimes have to shift because there aren't the referees that we need. Our process starts with our surveys. We talk with our students and we talk with our families. They fill out these extracurricular surveys at the end of each and every season, and it gives us some feedback that we go back and talk with our athletic directors, our coaches, and we saw some trends in some of that data that we were receiving back from them. There are similar campaigns across the state. There is Respect the Game with the Ohio High School Athletic Association. as well as the National Federation of High School Sports talks about benching bad behavior. So we're making sure that we are really emphasizing that positive culture that is needed at games. When we looked at our data, we recognized that we needed to dig a little bit deeper. And so we went to all 3 of our high schools, as well as 2 middle schools, to get even more feedback from our student athletes. We had focus group activities for the students, and really, we heard their voices throughout this entire process. We also led a parent group, family group from our boosters, and got some feedback from them as well on some of the initiatives that we had in mind. Some of the questions that we asked students included, have you ever faced a challenging situation in sports where maintaining sportsmanship was difficult, and how did you handle it? We heard things like, I have, and it's difficult when someone's not being a good sport because it makes you mad and then not want to play fairly. So again, what's happening around is impacting the way that they want to play and participate on the field and how they're going to be treating others. Sometimes they take a pause and think of something else and then come back to the situation with less intense emotions. So again, going back to that need for all of that social emotional play and making sure that we're coaching our students on how to handle that. And then another student said, you just have to prove it and prove it on the when you play. What are some ways that we can celebrate and recognize acts of sportsmanship within our school and our community? Here we heard kids talk about voting on players that you see having good sportsmanship and making sure that they are recognized. We want to have pep parties that sportsmanship is encouraged and have a sportsmanship committee full of students from all of our high schools.
So earlier, Ms. Yanni had mentioned efforts by the Ohio High School Athletic Association, by the National Federation of High School Sports to come up with campaigns. Now we wanted to look at what would a campaign at Westerville City Schools look like. So we took all that feedback, the data, and came up with 2 goals for this work. One being increasing awareness of the need for positive role models in the stands so students and the community can have a positive experience during an athletic contest. And 2, fostering an environment where student athletes feel supported, respected, and provided space to grow and enjoy the game. A lot of kids talked a lot about personal experiences when they're in a game and they feel, they see, they hear what might be happening in the stands, and it does have an impact on what they're experiencing on the field. So with those goals in mind, some themes emerged as we looked at that campaign. First being, we are the Ville. So if you see here, we've started to establish some branding. This logo reflects all of our buildings that serve students. It was created by Kyle Lewis. And so with this, we are the Ville. It serves as a reminder to students that no matter which school they attend, they are still one Westerville. And 2, it kind of sets the tone for future activities to reinforce camaraderie and good sportsmanship, and we'll get to that a little bit later in the presentation. And the second theme, let them play. Our kids talked a lot about they just want to play. So this captures kind of the spirit of that. Respect each other, respect the game, let them play. So it recognizes the need for an environment where students feel supported, respected, and provided space where they can grow and enjoy the game. So that goes back directly to one of the goals of our campaign. And also, it's a message that we want to see featured in our printed and digital materials. It's already coming out in some of our messaging to our high schools related to football. And it also serves as a theme of pregame announcements by athletes. Last season, some of our athletes at one of our high schools had prepared message from the Ohio High School Athletic Association's Respect the Game. So we wanted to localize that to Westerville City Schools.
Thank you. I have to give a really quick shout out to Matt Davis, who is manning the cameras and the switcher so that I can be up here. If we started naming off all the ways he helps the district, we'll be here until midnight. So thanks, Matt. Any educator will tell you the best way to coax a certain kind of behavior out of a student is to teach them about it and then model it. And we saw this as an opportunity. We took the idea was sort of based on the Greater Columbus Sports Commission's community cup games where they have members of the community come in and participate in basically an adult field day. And we wanted to do that with our students. So I'm sure everybody remembers field day is the best day of the year when you're in school. I learned at 41 it is also the best day of the year. So we asked our leaders at our high schools who would be some good students that we could invite to this, what we called the We Are the Ville games. We got a list of about 150 or so students. We ended up with about 50 high school athletes who were nominated by their coaches and administrators. They were split just about evenly from the 3 high schools. We mixed them up and put them on teams so it wasn't, Westerville North competing against South, competing against Central. They were all combined. And Superintendent Hamburg was kind enough to come and help us kick things off. Doug Ute, the executive director of the OHSAA, was our keynote speaker. And we had a mass of volunteers from all over the district, all the high schools, a lot of coaches, and a lot of central office people who you guys see up here at the podium pretty often. I am a much better video editor than I am public speaker, so we put together this video to kind of recap what the day was like.
Welcome to the first We Are the Ville Games. We are here to celebrate sportsmanship and all of you and what you bring to our community.
A special thank you to our student athletes for being here today. It is so very exciting to see you all in your matching We Are the Ville shirts.
Agility, balance, speed.
Get under. You got it. Go! Yes! You guys, it's not the 2 feet, was it? What? Hey, 16 here. Let's go! All right, there you go. Hamburg.
Appreciate your opponents, appreciate the effort they give, respect the effort that they give, because they love that sport that they're playing as much as you do.
You guys were selected by your coaches and peers to represent our schools, right? So I hope that you don't only take this back to your team, but really to the school in general and spread this message throughout our buildings. You're the leaders, that's why you're here.
So fun to see all the teams out there, to see North and South and Central kids mixed in, and your enthusiasm. So great job today, and it was hot, so way to push through and persevere.
So the day was a huge success. Everybody had a lot of fun. We had went through a lot of popsicles and water bottles and everything. It was hot. Should give a shout out to Dr. Nestor Baker for coming and
The chicken pass.
Yeah, I didn't know if you guys could tell, but she wasn't just holding a clipboard or blowing a whistle, whatever. She was in mixing it up with the kids and having a really good time. So.
I did feel like it was a workshop for all of the adults as well as for the students involved. It was just such great team building in general. And I hope that, it really did capture. It was a lot of fun. So we are going to continue to review our survey results, our student results. We had, as the kids were eating popsicles, they filled out a survey about their experience and about whether or not they would want to be involved in further further initiatives within their buildings, as well as the district in general, and how can we, step it up. We also asked our volunteers for feedback, and the feedback that we're getting, it just takes even this to the next level, and different ideas that we had again, it is about the community's voice. If the people that we are doing this work with and doing this work for, if they're behind it, then it just makes such a difference. It truly does. So we did review those survey results. We're going to continue to work with student groups. There will be a We Are the Ville Sportsmanship Award. It will be recognized by the Board of Education. This is something that we are excited to bring, that each season we will have the coaches nominate students for sportsmanship. A lot of time we nominate kids for being MVPs. This is about something different. And so we want to make sure that we're recognizing that, and it's something that the students have asked for. So we want to really make sure that that is happening. So those initiatives and the partnerships within our community. I don't know if Kyle mentioned it or not, but we also had Rotary members that were at the event. And that was just such a great way to involve our community, because it is not just about Westerville as a schools, it's about Westerville, our community, and how can we all pool as a community, because it's not just our school members that are coming to all of our games and our theater events and our band concerts. It's our entire community. So how can we make sure that our entire community has positivity? And so, thank you. What questions can we answer?
Any questions?
Share the podium as they ask questions.
Really quick. So what, I'm thinking about the mental health team. Did you collaborate with them on this project?
So the mental health team and actually members of the mental health team were there with us. That was a piece of it.
Mm-hmm.
We have worked with our coaches in past seasons doing QPR training. We want to make sure that that initiative is not lost. And so within this, we have three high schools. Two of our high schools already have student leadership groups for sportsmanship. And our third school is jumping on board, and they're going to be taking this and running with it. I feel like that is a way that we can infuse part of that, and making sure that we are making sure our kids know who are the people they can go to, who are their adults in the building, creating that sense of belonging, and where they're getting some additional feedback and strategies of how to make sure that they can handle themselves when times get tough.
Yeah. I really appreciate that, because a couple years ago we had a little incident, so I just want to always continue to revisit how important it is to get the mental health team in with our sports teams and make sure that we're set as the school starts.
Absolutely.
And I think initiatives like this and Hope Squad and many of the other things that have been implemented are going to continue just to build what a wonderful team district-wide. So thank you so much for all of this. It's amazing, absolutely. It was so hot that day. I don't know how you guys did it, but kudos.
And there were very few complaints about the heat. I mean, truly, everybody was celebrating. We could have used spritzers. That was one of the feedback. That was something that we got as feedback.
I think one thing that was so neat too is I asked a lot of the kids that were coming around our station, because they were just high-fiving, and you would have thought they were best friends forever. Like, hey, did you guys already know each other? Because they were from the different high schools, and almost all of them were like, no, we just met today. So we talked about just carrying that over then when you're in the student section at those rivalry games, and how do we, remember how to treat each other. But that was a really neat thing to see.
That's great. Thank you.
Becca, I was so pleased with the day. It was exciting, it was fun, and yeah, I haven't done field day for, I'm not telling you how many years, but it was seriously fun. But as I was there, and I'm talking to Doug Ute about it, and looking at everything that's going on, and seeing these young people and their interactions with each other, it's like, oh my gosh, this is a catalyst for so much more. It takes us far beyond sportsmanship. It takes us into every aspect of what we do in this community and this school district. And I want to thank you. I know I thanked you that day, but I want to say it again. The work you're doing with the position that you are in is phenomenally important to the fabric of this community. And I thank you for all that you're doing to help make sure that that warp and weave is tight as it needs to be.
It was definitely a team effort, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
All I have to say is awesome. Great job. This is fantastic. I guess I do have one question. You'd mentioned that one of the high schools before the games, they have some of the students read off some, materials from, I think it was OHSAA. Are they going to be doing that at all 3 high schools maybe this year?
That's our plan.
Okay, awesome, because we all know that it's usually the adults in the stadium, not necessarily the kids on the field who are behaving inappropriately. So a good reminder for everybody might be nice.
Yeah, and we feel that the students, their voice carries it stronger. So, we could have a typical announcer read it, but when a student who's going to be on that field reads it, it makes a bigger impact.
Absolutely, thank you.
Ditto. Great job. I love this. I'm so excited about it. I'm bummed that I missed it. I'll have to schedule it for next year so I know that it's going to happen. But really great job and wonderful logo. It does feel like a community, so great job. Thanks. Well, you don't get to go very far. Next time, we're going to be talking about the Westerville City School Coach Advisory Guidebook, and I'm going to welcome you back, Miss Yanni.
All right, thank you. So this Coach Advisory Guidebook is something that the athletic directors have always had in their back pocket. It's something that they've shared with coaches along the way, and it is definitely material that we have collaborated with. We put it into a Google site so that all of the coaches and advisors could have access to it at any time that they needed it. It really serves as an explanation guide, as well as just a great resource for them that they could access at any time. It is part our IT department. Thank you to Tim Siffler. He was able to link it into our bookmarks for any Westerville City School employee to be able to access. So I wanted to just highlight some of the areas that are in our pages in this site. So we've got school information that is in there, required certifications that all of our coaches and advisors need to receive or obtain. We have supervision, security, and safety expectations, as well as communication expectations, how to make purchases, because we do not want to get into trouble there, as well as our advisor's accounting manual. What are the expectations at the end of the season? What's in those handbooks for our students at the middle school and high school level, as well as there's future plans for explanation of power teacher and how that links with extracurricular expectations, as well as their grades and how coaches can check grades for students, as well as our PE waiver process. So right there is the landing page, and you can see that the school information and all of those are linked. And this is some from our resources and expectations page. Who needs a pupil activity permit? And kind of there's infographics for coaches and advisors so that they know exactly what that process looks like. There is a coach's tool chest is one of our training things that we are utilizing now, as well as there's links for Ohio ID so that they know exactly where to go. So all of those directions are there in that resources and expectations page. We are a member of the Ohio High School Athletic Association, and there's a lot of information in that website, and we highlight some of those things. Being a multi-high school district, sometimes where a student is supposed to go even is something that comes up quite a bit. So things like that flow chart are different resources that we have in there, as well as links to our Ohio Capital Conference. When it comes to supervision, security, and safety, we talk through what it looks like before, during, and after practice and events. So we're setting our expectation and setting the stage for our students, and making sure that our coaches understand what those expectations are. There's things like what about different weather conditions that's linked in there as well. So we make sure that we've got all of those pieces there for them to be able to get their hands on. When it comes to communication, we want to make sure that the coaches understand what the athletic department to coach and vice versa communication looks like. For logistics, who to reach out to for transportation, for any general needs for our athletic trainers, as well as final forms, the communication strategy that sometimes we use with our families, as well as making sure that they have access to the emergency medical information for students, what team communication should look like, and making sure that a staff member, the coach, understands what those strategies are for family and student communication. where to keep our team rosters, what team expectations are, including positive behavior intervention supports and what that looks like, what it means to letter in your different sport, how to update your scores, and as well as college signings, which we hold throughout the year. So that's all included in our communication landing page. Purchasing and fundraisers is something that is very big for our athletic groups as well as all of our other extracurricular activities. So we wanted to make sure that we included this flow chart from our treasurer's department. It makes things very clear on when you think you may want something, this is the process that you need to follow. So we wanted to make sure that we included that, as sometimes that trips people up if they're definitely not embedded within the system. We want to make sure at the end of the season, our coaches understand that there will be an evaluation and that we do survey. We talked about the surveys that we share with our families and our students a bit earlier. So what do those look like? What are those questions that are on there? And we want to make sure that we're very clear with what we're going to be asking of them. We linked in our handbooks, and our handbooks also have our extracurricular expectations. So if there is a disciplinary infraction, that is outlined in those handbooks. So we want to make sure that we're including that for them too. And again, this is for any staff member to be able to use. It will be for any, of course, it started with athletic directors, but it will go beyond that athletic avenue.
Any questions? I just have one.
Sure.
Just so we know that people know where this is and have read it, are we expecting that people will sign it or sign off that they have seen it, know where it is, read it?
Right, so that's something that we talked about, that it could be embedded within final forms. So that's one thing that we can add. Sometimes when we add something to final forms midstream, it kind of cancels all of the rest of the things that they may have done. So we don't want to necessarily reset right now, but definitely for next year, that would be something that we can look at in the future. But right now, it is that resource for all of our coaches, our advisors, and we're making sure that people know that it's out there. And then also asking the question, hey, what's not in here that you felt needed to be, so that way we can add it.
Great. I think this was said last time, but great job on all of this. Thank you so much for all the work you're doing. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay. All right. Next up, we have Student Wellness and Success Funds and Disadvantaged Pupil Impact Aid Plan. And Ms. Marshall,
Yes.
take it away.
Thank you, President Davidson and members of the board. So this is our second Student Wellness and Success Plan Disadvantaged Pupil Impact Aid report to the board. We did one last school year as well. I want to make sure that I'm very clear that this is not new funding to the school district. This is a new requirement that the state has placed on us around funding. So what we have for this year, our Student Wellness and Success Funds are estimated for fiscal year 2025, which is our current fiscal year, to be about $1.2 million. I'd like to note that last year it was about $1.4 million. So we are seeing quite a decrease to that funding this year as the state continues to shift that burden to our local community. And then our DPIA funds is estimated to be $1 million. And it is also decreased by about $12,000 this year in total. And then our other state or local funds, so that's what we spend outside of that state funding that comes through the state foundation plan. And that's estimated at $2.3 million for fiscal year 2025. And so this funding has it's not new funding. It hasn't been new funding, but it was part of the state foundation funding, and as the formula changes, it's now considered restricted funding within that. So not new funding, but new strings attached to the funding along with the reporting requirements. And so I'm going to turn it over to our Executive Director of Student Services, Tammy Santa, and our Executive Director of Elementary School, Cheryl Relford, and our Director of Assessment and Alternative Education, Nick McElwain, to tell you what these funds are spent on.
Thank you. Good evening, President Meyer, members of the board, Superintendent Hamburg, And thank you for that opening, Ms. Marshall. I'm going to lead us off and cover the student success, student wellness and success part, while Cheryl and Nick will cover the disadvantaged pupil impact aid portion. So as you see on this one pager, all of these funds require a collaborative effort from two places. One is a community provider from an approved list, which we select the Educational Service Center of Central Ohio. The other one will come from a community mental health provider, which we select Concord Counseling Services. Both of these providers we've used. This isn't the first time using them. We have longstanding partnerships with them. So those are the ones that we've selected for these dollars. So as you work your way down on the student wellness and success dollars, our focus continues to be the same. It's on two main areas. That is on our mental health services and our clinic services, which I am honored to support both of those buckets. And within those areas, we focused on really specific things. So under mental health, we're really looking at regulation skills when it comes to our students. And then when you pop over to the clinic side, we're looking at managing chronic conditions, as well as really trying to get a clear picture on the traffic in our clinics. And so what I think is really important to know is if you take both of these areas, right, medical conditions and clinical social work, those look very different in a private setting. So when we bring them into a school setting, then we're really focused and concentrating those services on getting students back into class. So it just looks very different than it would in a private setting. We're seeing a lot of success. We continue to monitor and measure impact on both of these buckets on a regular basis. There's lots of ways we gather this data. So that is through our panorama data, mental health kind of tracking sheets, I would say sign-ins into our counseling offices, as well as our school care data, which is the platform we use for the clinics. We're in our second year of using that. It's been tremendous. So overall, from this side of student wellness and success, we're seeing continued impact in both areas. I think what's also important to note is, like other sides of the house, this is more of a non-academic side, but we now have data-driven decisions we're able to consistently make when that comes to PD for these staff members, when that comes to staffing and what that looks like each year. So, this is really helping us make some thoughtful decisions in this area. So that is the summary for student wellness and success. Happy to take any questions before handing it to Cheryl.
Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Good evening. So I oversee the area of reading intervention. That's what we use this funding primarily to provide targeted, skill-based, small group reading intervention. And students who receive reading intervention receive this intervention on top of their core reading instruction that is delivered by the classroom teacher. So they are taught like all other peers in their grade level classrooms. The teacher provides high quality instruction with some interventions within the classroom, and then students are pulled for reading intervention, and on top of that, based upon their area of need. All students who receive reading intervention are students who are performing below grade level. I want to make sure that I share that piece. And they're on a reading improvement and monitoring plan. We progress monitor the skills that they're being taught, and we want to ensure that they're able to learn the skills in the classroom and in intervention so that they can apply the skills and show that they are working towards mastery. We are currently servicing about 20% of our students receive a reading intervention across the district K through 5. And we provide ongoing progress monitoring around if it's working or not, and we will make the necessary adjustments if we need to ensure that we're meeting the kids where they are. We are using 2 intervention programs right now, and that's Spire and Sound Sensible, and both of those programs are on the reading intervention approved list for the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce, and they are totally aligned with the science of reading. I did share that we do work to monitor our students' progress on the interventions that we're providing. We do have data that shows that kids who receive the reading intervention on top of core reading instruction do show growth in those foundational literacy skills. And so far, it's working, but the needs of our kids have grown. Any questions for reading intervention?
So those two programs, are they both online programs?
No, they are not. So those are the two programs that our reading teachers use to provide the skill-based instruction that's provided in person during the school day, where they pull students out of the classroom for small group instruction.
Okay. So it's one-on-one.
Not one-on-one.
Small group, sorry.
Small group.
Yeah.
And that small group could be as few as 3 up to 5 students in a group.
Okay.
And there was a mention of a slight reduction in funding. Are these, the amount of money that we're getting from the state and potential feds, does this cover the whole program?
So for reading intervention right now, I would probably say it covers that funding, but we are in a situation right now with some new legislation where we have to identify a new reading program K-2, and that will be additional funding required for that new mandate from the state.
Thank you.
I would say in addition to that, what does concern me, it's the kids that are just treading water, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they're probably working really hard, but if they had a little bit more help, it wouldn't be so hard. So it would be nice if we did have extra funds.
It would be.
To help them too, because they need it too. So, a dream.
Yes, hopefully it'll come true. Any other questions?
Just real quick before you step away from the podium. So you mentioned that K-2 piece that came down from the state. So if you haven't been paying attention, the great state of Ohio does require that we follow the science of reading for our reading programs. And so that's why we need a new program for our K-12, because that didn't quite meet the standard that's been set by the state. And the state has created an approved vendor list for those programs, right? And the one that we're currently working with isn't on that list somewhere.
So there's a portion of our reading program that is not on the approved list, and then there's another side where we are. So we are very fortunate that we were forward-thinking and proactive when we picked our original reading programs that we're currently using for all grades. But our grades 3 through 5, we already have Wit and Wisdom as our core reading program, and that program is on the approved list. Our K-2 reading program was not a complete core reading program, and their foundations is on the approved list, but we will have to identify a core reading program, and we are exploring which ones that are on that approved list to consider. Curriculum is very expensive. I don't know how else to say it. When we do an adoption of any program, K-5, I can only speak in my world of elementary, it could cost upward of $1 million, and that would be K-5. Now, with this current mandate, we have to purchase a program, and that means core, all pieces and parts of the reading program. So we're anticipating it may cost anywhere from $500 to, it just depends, because all of the pieces, it could be upward of $500,000. And the state has not designated any funding to cover those costs.
That also does not include the professional development that will be necessary for that new curriculum.
It does not.
I think it's worth noting that, so there's no misunderstanding, that even though what we currently use, part of what we currently use is not on the approved list from the state, that shouldn't be interpreted that we were using a failing reading program. We were using a reading program that was working for the needs that we had under prior legislation. With the change in the legislation and the change in what the state of Ohio has decided we will teach, this is a significant unfunded mandate. And in addition to the cost for the curriculum and the cost for the professional development, there is also this significant emotional cost for staff members who are deeply committed to the way that they have taught and effectively utilized the other ways of teaching reading that there are. I'm not saying science of reading is wrong. I am saying that there are massive costs to this sort of change, and it's important that people understand the depth of those costs.
And I appreciate you outlining it in that way. So imagine being on the forefront trying to convince our teachers that this is the way that we need to go, and it is not always well received. We have worked diligently across our elementary team to support our teachers and provide a system of consistent support and alignment, but it is difficult when you are, and I hate to use the word force, but we are mandated to change our practice. But the good news is we were watching and anticipating, and so we started our work. I've been in the district office 5 years. We started this work probably 6 or 7 years ago. And so the good news is it's not great that the mandates have come in the frequency that they've come and with a quick turnaround time. But we were in a better position than other districts because of the work that we had previously done. All of our teachers are required to do the science of reading training this school year, and so that's been a huge undertaking. And then if you weren't aware, last year we had to do dyslexia training. And so there have been, when we talk about the legislation that's being presented, it's really important that we understand the implications of those decisions, because when decisions are made within a year, it is a huge lift for us as a larger district to make those things work in an effective and efficient way, especially without funding.
You mentioned time. So when do we need to have this implemented?
So again, a decision was made where we have to make a decision regarding the core reading program for K-2. We have to decide by the middle of the year what program we're going to utilize, and we've already requested that we allocated the funding in our current budgets, and then we have to implement a portion of the program by the end of the school year. And so what we've promised our teachers so that they know what to anticipate, sometimes we can tell them in advance and sometimes we can't. But this year, because we knew it was coming, we've assured them that we are not asking them to implement anything new until the second semester. So we'll dig in and continue to do our homework and make the best choice that aligns with our core beliefs for literacy instruction in our district, that aligns to the state mandate, while supporting our teachers through the process.
Thank you. I have one last question. You mentioned cost, right? We know that we're not buying, per se, new textbooks every couple of years. Is there additional costs to keep up with that? Do you have to renew license every so often? Those types of things. I mean, people want to get paid, and now that we're online, they're finding new ways to do that, right?
Yeah. So we build that into whatever we adopt. We include those costs for licenses and things of that nature. But sometimes vendors change their products. And so I'm going to give you an example. We've been using Bridges Math for the past, I think, 7 years. Please don't quote me if that year is wrong, but the vendor just changed all of the programming. And so we have now what is viewed as an outdated program, and that program is up for review. And so we do have a curriculum adoption and review process where we pull a committee of teachers together to review our programs and resources and determine what adjustments we need to make. And we do we try to make good decisions so that we're using the taxpayer dollar in a very efficient and effective way, but the cost of purchasing hands-on, evidence-based programs for elementary use can be very costly.
Thank you. And I appreciate all the work that the second grade teachers are going to do to get this done.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I do have a question for you. You had mentioned that about 20% of the K through 5 students in the district need some kind of reading intervention. How many intervention specialists for reading do we have in the district, and is that an adequate number?
So last year, I'll say we have about 32 reading intervention teachers in our district. And those positions are funded from title funding and general fund. Last year, we did have to add a 0.5 additional reading intervention teacher to cover the need. And for the current year, that FTE that we added, so we ended up with 32.5, I think it is. We have enough to cover the student need as of today. I want to acknowledge that the needs do vary year to year depending upon where our students come in and what level of support that we provide. But we do a good job here in Westerville where we focus on that core reading instruction in the classroom first. Our classroom teachers then are providing some targeted intervention within the classroom, and then reading intervention is done, as I mentioned earlier, on top of that core instruction to ensure that we have crossed every T and dotted every I and are creating a true system of support for every student to experience some level of success. Now, I wish I could say that every child by the end of their first year is on grade level, but we're not there yet. And so some students will need that level of support for several years before they get to a place where they're able to function within grade level.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just real quick, you mentioned that there was no additional funding that came from the state for implementing this specifically, this curriculum specifically. I just want to note that our state funding for the fiscal year 2025, which is the year that we have to at least partially implement this, has been cut by the state by over $4 million.
Yes.
So no additional funds for this, but overall we're seeing a huge decrease in our state funding. Our state share decreased by about 7% with the calculations. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Nick McElwain.
Thank you, Cheryl. We are so blessed and thankful in Westerville City Schools to be able to offer our at-risk students an alternative to earn credits or an option instead of dropping out of high school through our Educational Options for Success or our EOS program. Not only does our program work with students on their educational needs, but we also work with our students on their social emotional needs as well. This has never been more paramount since coming out of COVID and the pandemic. Typically at the EOS program, we would work with those upperclassmen students that were behind on credits or were off track to graduation. But coming out of the pandemic, we have seen the rise in the social emotional needs of our students as well. So now we're working as well with those underclassmen students who are struggling with the anxiety, with the depression, just the noise that kind of goes on in the school, helping them and getting them at an earlier age to try to get them back on track to where we can earn some credits, we can get some momentum build up, and then possibly look at going back into their home buildings for a half day, or possibly as they get to their senior year, maybe transitioning back into the building for the entire day. So we've really had to shift our focus coming out of the pandemic due to those elevated needs. Typically, our program will work with about 150 students. We were a little over 160 students that we impacted last year and gave them an option to earn credits and stay within the Westerville City Schools. On average, we account for about 10% of our Westerville City Schools graduates every year. And our credit numbers have ballooned these past couple years with working with these younger students and getting them in at a younger age. Typically, on average, we're around 450 credits earned each year within our program with all of our students that we work with. But last year, we were over 500 credits. We were at 505. And the year before that, we were at 520. So 2 years straight, we have achieved over 500 credits with our students within our program, which is amazing that we're really helping them with their educational needs. But once again, that social emotional piece and working with kids, we also track that within our program as well. A lot of our students that come in, we know that they have had maybe some negative feelings or some negative interactions within school, and maybe school has kind of been a friction point with them and their families. When students come into our program, they take a social emotional survey that was put together and coordinated with our mental health team. And we see when they come into our program, what are they thinking with the schooling? What have been their experiences? What are their thoughts? What are their feelings? And then as they progress through our program and as they exit our program, we give them a survey again. And we take a look at those results and we compare. Did they have an increase in positive feelings towards school? Did they have a decrease in those negative feelings with school? And last year, 92% of our students that exited had a positive increase with their feelings and their attitudes and how they interacted with people at school, while 89% of the students that exited had a decrease in those negative feelings and that negative impact at school. So not only are we moving the needle with the educational piece, but also with that social emotional piece, we're really making some great strides with our students. We'll continue to look at our graduate numbers each year. We'll continue to look at our credit attainment numbers each year. We'll continue to look at our social emotional results to make sure that we are supporting the entire student. And we are very thankful to be able to use some of these funds to be able to impact our students in a positive way. I will gladly take any questions before I turn it over to Nicole for some final thoughts.
Any questions? No question. Thank you. Thanks for all the work you're doing.
Absolutely. Nicole, any final thoughts?
No, I think you guys did a great job. I do want to mention, because I got a text message, there is a reimbursement for a stipend to pay some teachers for the science of reading training that they have to go through, which is separate from our curriculum piece and implementing the curriculum for elementary schools, right?
That is correct.
Yes. Okay. So it's a very small stipend.
If I could add that the district has to compensate the teachers and seek reimbursement.
Yes.
For those stipends.
Yes. And I'm assuming help find ways to provide that professional development to our teachers as well. So, so nothing new to add, just a reminder that, again, not new money, just new strings and reporting requirements. And this is good work that I think our district has been doing for a very, very long time. I know as the state has focused funding, it shifts policy and focus sometimes, but I think we've done a great job working in the mental health space, the reading intervention space, and the alternative and assessment space. So, but thank you all for the work that you do every day and your teams and just all the good people that are doing this to make sure kids get what they need. So I appreciate you.
Thank you. All right, next up, we have our superintendent's report on back to school.
Thank you, and I do want to thank all of our team members who presented tonight. Just a lot of amazing things going on in the district on top of everything else that you're doing. Thank you for being here this evening. I do want to give a huge thank you to our staff for our convocation that we had on Friday, and thank you to all of you for attending, our board members. We've gotten a lot of great feedback from our staff members about just the great community feeling of bringing everybody together. So really excited to kick the year off with everyone. We are really excited, however, to welcome back our students on Wednesday. We have a 6th and 9th grade only days on Wednesday. We'll bring the rest of our middle and high schoolers in on Thursday. And just a reminder, we do have general start days for kindergarten and preschool, and we have transportation for them this year. But I want to give a special thank you to all of the people who've been working really, really hard to get our buildings open. So I know the board's aware, and just to make sure our community realizes, we have, with construction in schools, it's really, really difficult because we have kids in the buildings all year during the school day. And so we're really limited to those, summer break is our main opportunity to do the majority of the renovations. And then we have things going on over spring break and holiday winter breaks and all those different times as well. But we have four of our buildings that were kind of down to the wire, just as you get into older buildings and do renovation and you start moving things around with electricity and all those fun things that sometimes causes some delays. And so at Emerson, Hanby, Hawthorne, and Whittier, we know that our staff members have been in there just really working hard to get those buildings done. Had an opportunity to be in Hawthorne and Whittier on Sunday, and there were so many people there. We had custodians, we had, as was mentioned earlier, drivers and maintenance and different folks that were there pitching in, moving things around. A lot of our teachers in there trying to get their rooms set up with ceiling panels still out as they're finishing those inspections. So just appreciate, I know that creates extra stress, especially in our elementaries when they want to create those wonderful learning environments and they're trying to do that last minute, but wow, what beautiful spaces for the kids when they're able to come in, improve spaces. So not only updating those older buildings, but creating really fun learning spaces for the kids in the process. So excited to see those buildings when they're done. I do want to give a special thank you to the City of Westerville, Blunden Township, and Genoa Township. Their leadership on site, trying to help with those inspections, making sure that everything was done so we can safely have our kids back in the buildings on time. So just appreciate that and all the work that's gone in to getting our buildings ready to welcome our kids back on Wednesday, less than 2 days. The other thing I wanted to share at a district level is that we will have new ticket prices for our athletic events this year. There's a little confusion out on this, so I just wanted to share. The state is now requiring that adult prices of tickets be higher than student prices. And at Westerville last year, we had a flat $8 rate for high school, and we had a $5 rate for middle school and JV-only events. And so because we have to have that difference, and then they just kind of put a cap on, you might see as you travel to away events that people have different prices within the league, which has not been the case previously. We're not huge fans of that, but that's kind of the way it ended up. And so just so folks are aware, we have actually dropped $1 off of our ticket price for students. So we left adults at $8 for the high school and dropped the student ticket price to $7. And then at the middle school JV level, we left the kids at $5 and added $1 to the adult ticket prices to make those $6. So just an FYI, if you head out to an away game, you may see a different rate, and we wanted to kind of let you know what was going on there. So helps the kids out at our high school events, and we hope to get lots of students out there cheering on their peers. And that's all I have, unless you have any questions for me.
Also, I know that you had sent something out about the Golden Buckeye card for seniors, and could you just talk a little bit about that?
We do have Golden Buckeye, we have passes, I think they're called Superintendent's Gold Cards for Golden Buckeye holders, but you do need to be a resident of the Westerville City School District. And so you can stop by at our office downstairs and pick one of those up if you meet those criteria.
Great, thank you. Any questions?
Thank you.
All right. Moving along, may I have a motion to approve the minutes for the regular Board of Education meeting held on Monday, July 8th, 2024?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions, comments? Okay. Moving along to public.
We need to vote.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, we do.
Ready?
Yeah.
Dr. Nestor Baker?
Yes.
Mrs. Valentine?
Yes.
Mrs. Davidson?
Yes.
Mrs. Meyer?
Yes. Okay. Moving along to public comment, we do have one. Mr. Doug Krinsky. Just as a reminder, public comments are. Oops. Hold on. Oh, you'll have 5 minutes to address the board. Please state the agenda item that you're referencing at the beginning of your comments. A timer will be shown on the screen, and Mr. Doran will call time when 5 minutes has elapsed. Please keep your comments professional. Avoid the use of inappropriate language and refrain from identifying individuals in the event of a complaint, and please address your comments to the board and not to the audience.
Okay, thank you. I'm talking about several different points on the agenda tonight. 5, the minutes that you just approved, as well as 8 that's coming afterwards for personnel. So let me just start with, I'm very concerned about many things going on in the district. I've lived in this district for over 30 years. So after this, I'll give you a public records request. I'm making all emails received by everybody sitting up here since June 1st through today, as well as the 4 leaders of the unions in the district. On to the levy. The Ohio Department of Education website numbers for 2018-2019 were 14,822 students in the district. As of last year, it was down to 14,231, a drop of 4%, 591 kids. By your website, the budgeted revenue from 2018 to 2019 was $186 million. Last year was $214 million, the highest ever, up 14%. The highest area of the revenue this year, the highest area of revenue this year is from the real estate taxes area, $129 million, and you are now asking us for an additional $20.8 million, a 16% increase. In your projection for the 2023 to 2028, your personnel services employee salaries is going from $118 million to $159 million, up 34.7%. The last year, it only went up 3.6%. If that was maintained for 5 years, it'll only be 18%. So I don't understand why it's going up so much in your projection. Also, in retirement and benefits, they're going from 39,000 to 39 million to 62 million, up 57.7%. I don't understand that one either. It should be much less than that because last year was 1.6% up. Multiply that out, stays about 8%. So in voting to put up this levy, every board member talked about making the hard decision to ask for more money. I would say you made the easy decision. It's easy to ask for more money. It's the hard decision to say, tighten the belt, find cost savings, go down and advocate for additional funding from the State House and help the taxpayers. That would have been the hard decision. I've been to the State House to advocate for change. It's not easy, but it can be done. The Autism Scholarship is one of those examples. Instead, you took the easy way out. The last place you should be going to for money is the taxpayers, who have endured the highest interest rates, the highest inflation, the highest real estate reevaluation tax increases in decades. Your timing is impeccable, I have to say. The one thing taxpayers can do is control their school taxes. November 5th, we will. I would have thought you would have done one or more of the following, but you have done none of these yet. Offered early retirement programs, offered an internal incentive program for any employee that can think of a cost-saving measure, split the savings. Offered any cost-saving measures, reduced overall staff, reduced the number of buildings, down from 26. Enrollment is down 591 students. You can get rid of one building because on average there's only 547 students in a building. So you can sell one building, reduce costs. Transfer back the $30 million you just took out of the general operating funds. I hear you talk about all this money you need. You just gave away $30 million out of the general operating funds. I don't understand that at all. Ask the unions, like we did many years ago, for some support, some help on their contracts moving forward. I'm not saying eliminate their positions, but ask for their support. All that said, I do have a solution for your request. Revise the projections for the next 5 years. Keep them in line with where your salary and benefits were last year, 3.6%, 1.6%. On average, your contracts all read at 2.6%, 2.7% increases, plus minor dollars. But you know what? Stick to 3% and 2% salaries and benefits. Transfer back the $30 million into the general fund where we voted that money should be placed and used, not capital. So all the projections that you've done, I don't know where they came from, but they should be totally revised. Tax and spend is not a good approach. I encourage everyone to vote no on this levy coming up, and I have a handout for all of you. Thank you.
Thanks. You can just give it to Mr. Okay.
I'll take all of them.
Yeah, thank you. We can just have given it to Mr. Dorn in the back. Here, I'll take them all, and I can give them to everybody.
There you go.
Yep.
Okay. Thanks, Tracy. Okay. Next up, may I have a motion to approve the purchase in accordance with the Ohio Revised Code 5705.41D1 in Board Policy 6320?
So moved.
Second.
And Ms. Marshall, will you talk to us about this?
Yes, thank you again. So these are what we call then and now purchase orders. This is where we have a purchase order that was opened after an invoice date. We have several on this agenda, and I'm just going to go through each one of them if that's okay. So we have one with elementary teaching and learning with the junior achievement for Biztown. Opening the PO was an oversight. The funds were budgeted for this purchase. Westerville North Athletics had one with Agile Sports for huddle streaming. The vendor actually dated the invoice date June 30th, which is a separate fiscal year, but it was for beginning July 1st. So literally just a day's difference in timing of what they dated it. And then Westerville North Athletics had one with GL Daimel LLC for a scoreboard, and this was just due to the timing of when the vendor actually billed and the PO had been closed at the end of the fiscal year. Again, every time we cross fiscal years, we have these things that come through. Summer intervention with the math drawing tools for K-5 materials. The PO was inadvertently opened to the incorrect vendor. That was caught, but we had already closed the month out, so we weren't able to make that change in time. And then special education for REACH summer programming. That was part of an agreement we had for Student for Education. And then transportation, they had one for van repairs, and the vendor used the date that the secretary had called to request the repairs instead of the actual quote date that they were sent. And then Heritage Athletics with All-American Sports Corp for football helmets and shoulder pads, and this was an oversight. Again, all of these had budgets for them. It was just the date and the timing of the purchase order when they were open. So I would recommend that the board approve it. I can't pay it without the board's approval if it's more than $3,000 in this case. So,
Thank you. Any questions, comments? No. Okay, will you take the vote, please?
Mrs. Davidson?
Yes.
Dr. Nestor Baker?
Yes.
Mrs. Valentine?
Yes.
Mrs. Meyer?
Yes. And would it be okay if we take the personal consent agenda as one?
I'm going to ask you to pull out 8.12. My daughter Kate is on the agenda. She is coaching volleyball again this year.
Great, thank you. So may I have a motion to approve, a motion to approve the personnel consent agenda 8.01 through 8.11.
So moved.
Second.
And welcome, Mr. Cooper.
Good evening, President Meyer, members of the board, Ms. Marshall, and Ms. Hamburg. This evening's personnel consent agenda includes action items with regard to resignations, retirements, leaves of absence, contract status changes, one-time pays, and other employment-related decisions. Within item 8.01, classified resignations, it is with a heavy heart that I share that Scott Rayburn, assistant head custodian at Blendon Middle School, passed away on July 10th. We're appreciative of all Scott did for our students and staff, and certainly offer our deepest condolences and prayers to his family as they go through the days ahead. We have two staff members who have announced their retirement on this evening's agenda. Sharon Hayes is retiring after 13 years of service to our district, and Joseph LeGros after 11 years of service to Westerville. We appreciate all they've done for our students, staff, and community, and wish them the best in their retirement years ahead. Finally, it is an honor to have the opportunity to introduce Ashley Diaz to the board as the recommendation for the next assistant principal at Minerva France Elementary. Ms. Diaz is here tonight and has a wealth of knowledge and skills gained in her time and her experience as an elementary and intermediate grades intervention specialist prior to joining Westerville City Schools, as well as an intervention specialist and MTSS coach over her time here in the last 7 years in the district. Ashley has worked with families and staff at 4 of our elementary buildings in her time so far with the district, which include McBay, Huber Ridge, Minerva France, and Mark Twain. At this time, I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Any questions or comments? Just our deepest condolences to Mr. Rayburn's family. Great, will you take the vote?
Mrs. Davidson?
Yes.
Mrs. Valentine?
Yes.
Dr. Nestor Baker?
Yes.
Mrs. Meyer?
Yes. Okay, may I have a motion to approve 8.12 employment supplemental licensed and PAP resolution, August 12th, 2024?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All right, take the vote, please.
Dr. Nestor Baker?
Yes.
Mrs. Valentine?
Yes.
Mrs. Davidson?
Abstain.
Mrs. Meyer?
Yes. There's no old business. Up next, we will be having the first reading of Policy 2026, Non-Discrimination on the Basis of Sex in Education Programs or Activities. And welcome, Mr. Doran.
Thank you. I just wanted to let you know that there's no substantial changes in this policy, just housekeeping with the title of the Title IX coordinator name change. That's it.
Great. Any questions or comments? Okay, thank you. And then next up, we'll have the first reading of Policy 5111.01 on homeless students. Ms. Marshall, will you talk to us about this?
Yes, thank you again. So we had received funds from the American Rescue Plan, which are federal dollars, to support students who are experiencing homelessness. These were meant for like wraparound services. These funds expired last year, fiscal year 2024, and we'd like to continue to support students in these situations. We've consulted with our attorney on how to be able to do that, and they suggested that the board update the policy to allow for those wraparound services to be considered a proper public purpose. So I just want to mention that this is not a regular thing that we would do throughout the school year. These are sort of like very few and far between emergency situations where a student might experience sudden homelessness and they might need maybe a hotel stay. A lot of it is transportation to and from extracurricular programs so that we can continue to remove barriers for them to be able to access the educational program and extracurricular programs. So it's just a paragraph being added to the policy that identifies those as a proper public purpose.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
Are other districts doing this? I think it's fabulous, but I just hope they are.
There are some other districts that have looked at doing this as well. I don't know if they've actually started down the policy road yet, but it's been an ongoing conversation with my group of treasurers in the area. So,
okay,
yeah,
great.
So the phrase that says the board authorizes the treasurer to budget funds and to pay expenditures from the general fund for this purpose, that is the piece you were explaining about these smaller as-needed emergency pieces that need the proper avenue created. You're not talking about creating a massive new expenditure program. I just want to make that clear.
No, it's so it will be a small piece of the budget that our homeless liaison will manage, and we're working with her to set up that budget.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that people understood that's what we were talking about.
Anything else? Okay, thank you. Next, may I have a motion to approve the resolution for transportation routes for the 2024-2025 school year?
So moved.
Second.
And welcome, Mr. Snyder.
Good evening, everyone, once again. Before you this evening is a resolution to adopt and approve the school bus routes and van routes for the 2024-25 school year. A little background and justification, if you will. The Ohio Administrative Code 3301-83-13 requires annual district board approval of all bus routes, stops, and time schedules, either up to 30 days before or 10 days after the start of the school year. And for the state of Ohio, transportation is required for students in grades kindergarten through the 8th grade who reside more than 2 miles from their school of attendance. I'm proud to say that Westerville's service parameters continue to exceed those state minimum requirements. Our district provides transportation for students in kindergarten through 10th grade, and we also transport and provide service for 11th and 12th graders for those students on a space available basis. Westerville City Schools provides my van service for students with special education requirements for transportation in grades K through 12. This past school year, for the 2023-24 school year, we ended our school year with 99 routes to 36 locations, 25 public schools, 8 private and charter schools, and 3 career centers. And as we indicated earlier tonight in our presentation, for the start of this year, we will start the year with 98 bus routes to 37 locations, 25 public schools, 9 private and charter schools, and 3 career centers. It's worth noting that that 9 private and charter school number went up by 1 because one of the buildings that we serve, one of the schools, they opened an additional building on the same campus. So we're virtually not going to another location. It's 2 buildings instead of 1 now on the same campus. There are currently, as of 5 o'clock this evening, 10,611 students that are assigned for transportation services to start the school year, and that number is growing. It is our recommendation, therefore, that the board approve the designated bus routes and stop locations for the 2024-25 school year tonight.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, Ms. Marshall?
Thank you.
Dr. Nestor Baker?
Yes.
Mrs. Davidson?
Yes.
Mrs. Valentine?
Yes.
Mrs. Meyer?
Yes. Up next, we have public comments, and just as a reminder, each speaker will have 5 minutes to address the board. Please keep your comments professional, avoid the use of inappropriate language, and refrain from identifying individuals in the event of a complaint. Please address your comments to the board and not to the audience. If you have any handouts, Mr. Dorn's happy to take them. With that, our first person up is Ms. Jacqueline Fraley. I'm sorry if I pronounced your last name wrong. Okay. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I wanted to speak tonight for myself and for my husband, who is here with me, to address our concerns about the LifeWise program. We are parents to an incoming first grade student at Hanby. We knew when our daughter entered public school this year, we would have changes and challenges, good and bad. What we did not expect was to have to deal with the challenges of the LifeWise program, especially sending our daughter to a school whose focus is STEM. While we have many serious concerns about the LifeWise program, our greatest concern is for our daughter. The division created among students, the potential for an increased bullying culture among children who attend LifeWise, and those that do not. Westerville is a community that is growing in diversity. Our community has become an amazing mix of cultures as we see more immigrant families feeling safe and moving into our community. Like many of these families, our family is not of the Christian faith. For our family, the evangelical teachings of LifeWise go against the morals and values of inclusion and acceptance, regardless of faith, gender, sexuality, and privilege that we teach in our home. The parents of children who briefly attended the program have stated children are encouraged and rewarded when they invite and bring new children with them. The children are told to speak to other children in school about what they have learned, to share their faith, and that it's important that they do so. The children are incentivized with praise, their stories shared on LifeWise social media pages, and other rewards when they share stories about how they included LifeWise during the school day and with their non-attending peers. They are often sent back with candy and small toys as rewards from the program. My husband and I have had, and no deeper conversations are coming about faith, why some children go to different places of worship, celebrate other holidays, and express their faiths in such ways as wearing a hijab than is seen in our family. We knew the conversations would grow when she attended school. However, we never expected to have a potential weekly discussion about why she cannot attend a fun school field trip and program with her friends. We understand LifeWise is not associated through school, but through the eyes of a 6-year-old, when it occurs in the middle of a school day and the students are picked up on a bright red school bus, it is a school program. We will have to help our daughter, pardon me, I have technology. We will have to help our daughter navigate conversations well beyond her age, to find ways to tell her close friend and peers she isn't allowed to join them because her family has a different religion than the one being taught at LifeWise. She may be told and even bullied that she won't be loved by God or going to heaven because she doesn't follow the evangelical teachings that will be taught to these other students, the teachings they are being told to take into school and to share with others. Our country is becoming more divided by politics and religion every day, sometimes to the point of violence, a violence that has found its way into our schools already. We had hoped our daughter would be shielded and protected from these growing divisions, especially in the Hanby program that is focused in science. We hoped Hanby would be a safe place where that part of her could stay safe just a little while longer. We ask you today to take a step for all children by giving our children a place where inclusion is key. We ask you to suspend the current affiliation with the LifeWise program and create rules to prevent other such programs from causing disruption among the children in Westerville schools. We ask this on behalf of Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, Sikh, agnostic, atheist, and other Christian families whose beliefs diverge from the LifeWise program and whose children are at risk of feeling left behind or worse, being treated differently by other students from not attending. Thank you for your time.
Up next, we have Miss Sarah McCarty. Just a reminder, 5 minutes. Welcome.
All right. My name is Sarah McCarty. I live at 404 Delaware Drive. I want to start by saying good evening, and I'm also here today to express some concerns about the presence of LifeWise Academy in Westerville City Schools. To provide some context, my daughter is an incoming 5th grader at Hanby Elementary, and she's attended Hanby since she was in 1st grade. When my wife and I heard about LifeWise pulling students from our daughter's school, which I'd like to point out that we did learn about from literature sent home in a folder of hers at the beginning of the year. So that literature was distributed during school hours by district employees. We looked into the program and quickly gleaned some unsavory facts. LifeWise has a clearly stated anti-LGBTQIA policy. Their stance on homosexuality is communicated explicitly in their literature. It is always unacceptable, and therefore queer relationships do not constitute a marriage or a family. And since LifeWise Academy does not acknowledge my marriage or my family as real, it was an easy decision not to opt in. And this is the solution that proponents of LifeWise always provide. If you don't want your child to go, don't sign them up. It's simple enough, right? Unfortunately, that's not how living in community with each other works. On days that students attend LifeWise Academy, they wear red shirts, LifeWise shirts. These shirts provide a visual cue to all students about who is in the group and who is not. Having kids wear jerseys creates teams. My daughter has explained that on numerous occasions, she has been confronted by peers in LifeWise. She's been asked to explain why she does not attend and pressed about if she believes in Christ, in God, in religion. My daughter has said that these interactions have come sometimes, and at best, from a place of grave concern for her. And at other times, the worse, from a place of condescending superiority. It has caused her great discomfort over the last few years to have to answer such personal questions to a group of children that stand firm in knowing that their religious views are validated. And it makes sense why they would think that their views are correct. Allowing them to leave school and receive this instruction during the day inextricably binds the district to what they learn at LifeWise. All of this seems incredibly counterproductive for a school district that otherwise is so clearly committed to diversity, equity, inclusion, student safety, and well-being. And I want to end my time here with a final observation that really strikes me as quite telling about LifeWise Academy's true goals. And this requires me to share a bit about myself. I've lived in Westerville my entire life. I attended Amherst, then Heritage, graduated from North in 2012. I have a bachelor's degree in English and a master's degree in education from The Ohio State University. I'm a high school English teacher teaching honors 9th grade English and AP language and composition at a neighboring school district. My wife, too, is an intervention specialist in a nearby district as well. We could not be facilitators at LifeWise, even though we are certified teachers, because we are married to one another. And I think that fact alone makes it clear how much LifeWise Academy is not focused on religion alone, but rather something far more political and far more sinister. I implore you to take a page out of Gehanna's playbook, a neighboring district, and not allow LifeWise to continue to contribute to the harassment and bullying of students, some of our most vulnerable here in Westerville City Schools. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I'm having a hard time reading this handwriting, so last name of Nutt. My apologies, Mr. Nutt.
No, it's an unusual name, isn't it?
Could you say it?
Rick Nutt.
Oh, okay. I just couldn't read the Rick part.
Oh, yeah. Well,
I'm sorry, my
well,
handwriting,
I
like
should
you
have
could be a
printed as
doctor,
opposed
right?
to using my. Thank you. My name is Rick Nutt, 65 Haddam Place West. I'm a retired professor of religion at Muskingum University, and I am reading a statement for my wife, who could not be here. My name is Mary Jean Boatler. I am a retired Presbyterian pastor. My husband and I live in Amherst, where we volunteer as tutors. I'm opposed to the intrusion of the LifeWise program into our public education in Westerville. The fact that it originates from groups that oppose public education in favor of private religious schools funded by public vouchers should give us pause. The theology and social policy that LifeWise brings into our schools should harden our opposition. Last year at Amherst Elementary, our brilliant art teacher directed the creation of a mural on the wall depicting the diversity of children in the school, diversity in body types, gender, race, ethnicity, religion, and differently abled. However, what it can't capture is that some children are from two-parent families. Some live with one parent. Some children live with a father and mother. Others live with two fathers or two mothers. Some children have step-parents and some children have gay siblings. More painful, some children are abused or in situations that cause fear and anxiety. Children bring all of this into the school day. LifeWise believes that divorced parents or unmarried parents are sinful, that gay people are sinful, and that people who do not believe in Jesus are going to hell. It is true that this theology is taught in some churches in this community on the weekend. We can't control that. But when we bring it into the school day, it suggests that the school board, the school administrators, the school counselors, and the teachers feel this way as well. It provides a stamp of approval that can be devastating for young children, and it tears at the community that our schools should be building. At Amherst Elementary, the children stand each day for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the singing of the Amherst All-Stars Pledge. We will strive to do our best, take responsibility, always have integrity, respect others, and stay safe. How can we expect our children to act with respect when we, the ones they look up to and count on, do not? In early August, we visited the LifeWise office in hopes of viewing the curriculum. We were told that they didn't have the full curriculum for us to view, but allowed us to view 8 lesson plans. After spending an hour, we came away feeling even more concerned. Let me describe 3 lessons. The first lesson is the story of creation. For people of faith, the story presents a theology of creation that answers the question of who created and why the world was created. It does not tell us how or when. Those are scientific questions. And yet the LifeWise curriculum presents a story that is in conflict with public school science classes as it focuses on the how and when questions. The second lesson was on obedience. It presents the story of Abraham being told by God to kill his son Isaac as a sacrifice. Most people could clearly identify this as a story of an abusive father, both Abraham and God, and not one to be taught to children. It is one of those texts of terror in the Bible that can only be viewed in the larger context of the biblical witness. Imagine what this says to one of our elementary children being abused. Obedience? This is what we have allowed in our schools. The third lesson is on the crucifixion of Jesus. Again, a story that must be handled with great care with children. It is enough to explain that Jesus died. LifeWise lessons stress the method of his death, and in an activity to stress it, they have children take red markers and place nail marks on the spot where Jesus would have been nailed to the cross. In a history lesson, would you ask elementary children to watch the film of President Kennedy's death? When you have non-educators who do not understand the social and psychological impact of curriculum choices, this is the result. I plead with the school board to reverse your earlier decision and to stand with those school boards who seek to protect our public education as a place where children can thrive apart from the outside influence of agenda suspect groups like LifeWise. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nutt. Up next, Thank you. Up next, we have Ms. Suzanne Laird. Just a reminder, you have 5 minutes. If you have any handouts, Mr. Dorn in the back would be happy to take them. And welcome.
Hello, my name is Suzanne Laird. I live at 329 Old Mill Drive. Good evening, President Myers, Superintendent Hamburg, and members of the board. I come before you as a retired teacher, former substitute, foster parent, and taxpayer with my concerns about LifeWise infiltrating Westerville Public Schools. I am very disappointed in a school board which has allowed an evangelical religion to disrupt our students' essential instruction time. In the aftermath of COVID, social interaction during lunch and recess is essential. I am aware that this policy was permitted by previous board members, some of whom were pastors, but you must take responsibility for the fact that you each have allowed this to continue. Now, I am sure since joining the board, you have acquainted yourselves with this program and attended at least one LifeWise class, correct? Correct? Because I have. Last Thursday, August 8th, I attended the LifeWise Academy 101 meeting at an isolated church off Sunbury Road, where you are proposing sending Robert Frost Elementary School students every week. Holy heck. I won't even go into some of the disturbing things I heard. Let's just consider safety. As a foster care provider, I would have lost my license had I allowed one of my kids to participate in this. I taught my kids to run, fight, hide when they were in danger. Where would an elementary kid run from Cross Point Church? And on the other hand, those other churches utilized in uptown Westerville for this, are the students locked in? Can random folks wander in? Are they as safe as in a Westerville school? Are they safe with these so-called teachers? Referring to these people as teachers is not simply a misnomer, it is an insult to all licensed professionals in the state of Ohio. And it is confusing to elementary students who are used to encountering authentic, trustworthy professionals during the school day. LifeWise will try to tell you that many of our people used to be teachers, and I asked, so I can look them up in the Department of Education database. Well, so their licenses are current and background checks up to date. What is that commandment about thou shalt not bear false witness? It is my understanding that the background checks and fingerprints are not conducted by the BCI or FBI, but by a company that LifeWise pays. And the search only goes back 1 year. No wonder one of their, I refuse to use the word teacher, let's say handmaids, was fired just last month here in town for inappropriate sexual contact with a student. Holy heck. Which brings me to this release of liability form. This protects LifeWise, not you. What parent wouldn't sue Westerville City Schools if there is an incident? I would suggest you suspend the program you have allowed to infiltrate our schools immediately until you have legal immunity established. And I do mean infiltrate. The coloring papers, the dot-to-dot pages the kids receive should never cross the threshold of the public schools as those kids return each day. Let me connect the dots for you. You're proposing a levy on the ballot, yet you've chosen to release elementary students to unknown disciples once a week. Don't tell this retiree that it's not a disruption to the day. Don't tell us our tax dollars, which pay for a full day of instruction by qualified educators, can be subverted to outside influences once a week, and then expect a levy to pass. And don't tell me you're keeping our students safe. Suspend this program immediately. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Laird. Next up, we have Mr. Doug Krinsky. Just a reminder, if you have any handout, Mr. Dorn in the back can take it, and you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Nope, no handout this time. I'm going to refer back to the June 24th board meeting at approximately 12 minutes, 34 seconds into the video. It was mentioned that kids that get transportation to schools like St. Paul's, Oakstone, Central College Church, All the Children of the World, Northside Christian, and other private and charter schools, that those expenses on the top of other expenses that go along with those kids are an, quote, administrative burden, unquote, on the district to administer that funding for those programs. Those kids and their parents are legally choosing to send their kids out of the district for many reasons. For the 7 of you to point out these kids and make examples of them is offensive to those families and kids. It's the law. Stop complaining and picking on these kids. Any expense in this district could be considered a burden, but for the 7 of you to orchestrate that conversation about these kids and their families is unreal, especially kids on IEPs that have special needs. Shame on all of you. Why don't you talk about the largest expense in this district as a burden, the teachers' salaries? Because it would be ludicrous to pick on those teachers. How about give these students and their families the same respect? I will be voting no on this levy, and I hope everyone in this district joins me, especially the St. Paul's, Oakstone, Central College families, and all other administrative burdens in this district. Redo the projections, transfer back the $30 million, look for cost-cutting saving measures, and stop asking for more money of the taxpayers. Also, what is the board policy about campaign materials in district buildings, on district property, and/or employees? What is the policy about employees working on the campaign while on the clock and being paid? And let's keep this civil and ask your side not to steal signs, destroy yard signs, etc., etc. It happened to me and several other people that were on the no side. Let's try and be civil about this if we can. I won't get that crazy on this, but anyway. The other thing I do want to point out is, you may wonder what organizations have I touched base with and some of my friends. Believe me, we've touched base with all of them. So there's quite a consortium of folks that are not going to be happy about this levy and will be working diligently to defeat it. I've also contacted every state rep and every state senator that covers this district about this levy, as well as many friends that live in the district. I have to say that in talking to most of the state reps, either offices or reps and senators, there's a lot of questions about what's going on in this district. And it's not the first time, and it won't be the last time. So I'll tell you this, there's more to come, and I'll see you at the booth in November. Thank you.
Next up, we have Miss Catherine Poppy McMillan. And my apologies, I hope that's right. Okay, thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, President Meyer, Superintendent Hamburg, and members of the board. My name is Catherine Poppy McMillan, and I'd like to speak with you about Westerville's policy on half-day and all-day kindergarten. The current policy of having half-day kindergarten as a default is a burden on many families. I have 3 children in the district. One is in middle school, one attends Point View as a second grader, and I wanted my 3rd child, who is starting kindergarten this year, to also attend Point View with her older brother. Unfortunately, she is unable to do so because she did not receive a lottery spot into full-day kindergarten at Point View. This is causing my family a tremendous amount of stress this summer, as we have discovered that every daycare that we called was unable to bus my daughter to Point View for a half day of kindergarten. Now, there may be some daycare that we didn't find that my husband was unable to contact, but we spent days trying to find a place for my daughter to go. We both work full-time outside of the home. We have no option but to have our children in daycare or all day at school unless one of us were to quit our job or to find a work from home job that was considerably less well paying or perhaps not even in the field that we are currently working in. Times have changed. It is no longer the case that most families have a stay-at-home parent. In most families, both caregivers work full-time outside of the home, or there is only a single caregiver in the home. I do not know of a comparable district in the area that defaults to half-day kindergarten besides Olentangy. The curricular standards have also changed. Kindergartners are expected to do much more when they finish kindergarten than they used to. To be able to do all that is expected of them, all children should have access to all-day kindergarten as a default. In addition, $3,000 to pay for tuition is a tremendous amount of money for any family. I understand that there's assistance available for families, but even for a solidly middle-class family like mine, $3,000 is a lot of money. On top of that, I must also pay for before and after school childcare. Our plan was to have our middle schooler pick up our 2 younger children from Point View and walk them home, where he is more than capable of attending to them until I return from work. That is no longer an option because he cannot walk to 2 different elementary schools to pick up his siblings. As a result of the district policy, then, I am forced to pay for after-school care that I was not originally budgeting for. I understand that I am speaking on this from a very personal viewpoint, but I think that there are probably many families in the same boat that my family is in. My daughter is very upset about attending Charrington after being told that she was going to attend Point View with her brother. She's familiar with Point View. Her brothers have both gone there, and she's attended many events there. Her brothers love Point View, and they've hyped it up for her. Not attending Point View is very sad for her. I would encourage this board to consider adopting a new policy that has all-day kindergarten as the default for students rather than half-day kindergarten. I think this will address the changing times and the needs of families, as well as making it more equitable for all students in the district. Students should be able to attend their home schools with their older siblings. Parents should know that their children are receiving the full complement of learning services through an all-day kindergarten program so that their children can achieve a standard set up for them, especially the 3rd grade reading guarantee. As an educator myself, I know the weight and demands of the state report card and the perception of the district that relies on those ratings. While I know that all-day kindergarten as the default would add financial burden to the district, I have come to know that this is an innovative and creative district that's committed to high education for all students. Therefore, I am confident that this board could find a workable solution. I think a great starting point might be a survey to all Westerville families. I would love to know if there are other solutions that you all have been investigating that I am unaware of. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. There are no more public comments, so now I'm going to turn it over to the board. Any who would like to go first? No? Any comments?
I do. I'm trying to organize, sorry.
Okay.
1 second.
Nancy, do you have anything? Louise?
Am I the only one with comments?
No.
Oh, go ahead.
I will kick things off for board comments. First of all, thank you to all of you who did come to speak this evening. This is why these meetings are public, so that folks can come and voice their concerns and suggestions. So thank you for all of those of you who spoke. There was a lot said tonight from all of the various folks who came to provide public comment. And I think for me personally, it's going to be, I will need to digest some of this and maybe come back at the next board meeting and have some additional commentary. We have heard concerns about the LifeWise Academy. That is not something that is necessarily new to me personally. I have heard about that. We will have to discuss further, I think, about what that means going forward. As for the levy being on the ballot, I do want to say that as a parent with a child who is on an IEP, it feels very attacking to me personally that you are saying that I don't understand, what those other families are going through. Because I have a child who was on an IEP K through 5. He is on the autism spectrum, and there are certain needs that he has that were different than some of his classmates. It is absolutely every parent's choice as to where to send their children. That is absolutely a choice that every parent is given. But to expect the public school system to pay and administrate where those children go and pay for the transportation and whatnot, that is an extra thing that the district has to do that they wouldn't otherwise have to do if the child was attending the public school. And I get it. There are circumstances where we cannot necessarily accommodate for children who have a lot of special needs. I get that. That is why there's an autism scholarship program. That's fantastic. But for a lot of other parents, they choose other private entities for very different reasons, and that is their choice. But don't look to the public school district to pay for your choice, because we are offering quality public education here within the Westerville City School District, and you may choose to go outside that district, and that is your choice, and have at it. But we are providing education. You are simply choosing to go elsewhere.
That's the law.
I am speaking now. You had your time to speak.
Make sure you speak facts.
And while it is the law, that doesn't mean the law is accurate. We have plenty of laws on the books that are. I would love to advocate to change it, and I have run twice to try to be a state legislator to change this. They do not listen. And this is why we have an amendment on the ballot to end gerrymandering here in this state, because those folks need to be accountable, and they're not accountable. It is wasted breath going down to that state house and trying to convince some of our state legislators that public education is important and they need to give money to it. We are sitting on $1 billion rainy day fund. When is it raining enough that that money should be spent on things that matter, like our kids? That is what drives me nuts about the state legislature.
You're not advocating hard enough then, because it's not getting done.
Sir,
You have had your time to speak.
Please
stop. Correct. So I just want to make sure that everybody knows we are not anti-private school. We are not anti any other school. Parents have those choices. But it does come back to us as the public school system to have to take on these additional costs, these additional efforts. And meanwhile, the state legislature continues to cut our funding, additional mandates, less funding. The funds have to come from somewhere. It was mentioned that we should be coming up with cost-saving measures. I implore you to talk to our facilities folks. We are using, high-efficiency light bulbs. We've had HVAC renovations so that they run more efficiently. The lights are off when nobody's in the buildings. Like, these are things that have been implemented, small things that can have big impacts. Where I don't think we should be cutting costs is saying, well, let's just not have intervention specialists because that's extra. We don't need that. Or, we shouldn't have art. Art's not core curriculum. Who needs art? Those aren't the types of things that we should be doing in order to compete with our neighboring districts so that people want to come here. They want to live here. They want to send their children here. That's just the reality of it. So I have a lot of thoughts on those things. I just wanted to make sure that folks know that it's not because we are anti-other schools. It is simply a fact of how things work when it comes to the public education piece of things. And if you feel like advocating to your state legislators, go for it. I have not found it particularly successful. So.
Okay. First, thank you to all of our speakers, and I truly mean that. Thank you to all of our speakers. I think it's good for us always to hear the other side. I will say when I receive emails one way or the other, and a name pops into my head, I am going to go back into my history and see who has emailed me before. And the people in the past that haven't supported the levy for one reason or another, it doesn't seem to change. So this is not the first time we've heard this conversation. And it continues to come up every time there's a levy on the ballot. I've been doing this for 11 years. You've been in my email box several times, so it is fine. Secondly, LifeWise, to the speakers. I just want to say I'm sorry. So I was on the board when this was implemented, and I did not do my due diligence. But I will tell you, since then, I have. And it isn't about religion, right? There is a hidden agenda. This is all about politics. And instead of maybe talking to our older students, there's a reason why our K-5 kids are being targeted, and they are being targeted. So I am one board member. Those are just my thoughts and feelings. I am saddened and disappointed. So I hear you. I hear you. To the Rayburn family, my deepest condolences. I am so deeply sorry for your loss. Words can never fill that void. On a positive note, we're heading back to school. And we had the most amazing Friday last week with convocation. And like I said, I've been here a long time. It was so uniting and beautiful. This admin team, all the staff members, our new superintendent, really has united everyone and brought people together. And that's where we really need to be. So we have issues, give us a chance to work on them. If you don't support us, it's okay. It's okay. But we really want to treat each other with respect and be united. So happy back to school. That's it for me.
There's a lot that I could say, and there's a lot that I probably will be saying in coming days to any number of you. I'm going in a different direction with my comments this evening. A little different, something that I want to tell you, something that I've been giving a great deal of thought to for some time now. This month marks my 25th year as a Westerville board member. I was initially appointed in August of 1991. I was elected and then served through December of 2005. I then came back to the board in January of 2014. How quickly 25 years at this table have passed. Someone said to me recently that this Westerville City Schools is truly a special place. It is. Whether we agree on everything, whether we disagree on a number of things, it is a special place. It's our people of all ages and all roles. It's our community. It's our shared reasons for doing what we do that remain at the heart of who we are. Westerville City Schools is indeed where we belong, and we are indeed the Ville. Over the past couple years, my life has changed a great deal. My business and professional demands have grown exponentially and will continue to do so. This concerns me a great deal as I consider my board service and what I think truly good board service means. So I've given it a lot of thought. And even though, actually, because I love this place and I love the great work that we do here, I have decided that this 25th anniversary, oh boy, I told you I'd cry. It's time for me to retire from public service. So I will. My retirement will be effective at the end of the day, August 31st, 2024. I thank you all.
Wow, okay. A lot to digest tonight, I would say. A lot. So I want to reiterate a huge thanks for everyone that came out, talk about your experience with LifeWise, all-day kindergarten, Really appreciate you guys doing that and taking the time. And, you know, there's a lot to unpack there, and we'll continue to digest and have conversations internally, and more to come, but from me, so thank you. Wow, that kind of threw me, I'm sorry. I want to reiterate a big back to school yay. I can't believe we're here already. And wish all the students and faculty and staff and teachers a wonderful year. And just want to thank everybody for all the hard work that they have done over the summer to prepare us for this moment on Wednesday and Thursday. I really hope that you all have a good year. I want to express my gratitude for the convocation. It was a wonderful day. I walked out of there feeling like the Ville. I love the new logo, I really, really do. I've been saying, some of you will know, I am a Westerville North alum. My daughter goes to South and my son will go to Central. So we are a divided house, and this brings it all into one. So I appreciate that. It's interesting, sir, that you brought up some of that information that you did. I would agree with my colleague, Ms. Valentine. We're not against school choice. And some of those things I'm really have no idea what you were talking about. So, but there is one thing that I recently read, a report that came out from the U.S. Senate Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions. And it stated that the state will spend, the state of Ohio, $964.5 million in fiscal year 24 and $1.05 billion with a B in fiscal year 25 on 4 private school voucher programs. These figures surpass the recent state investment of $300 million, little m, for new career and technical education classrooms and equipment in the 2024-2025 state budget. And I quote from this report, Ohio can more than triple its investment in career and technical education with the money it is spending on private school vouchers. Again, it's choice, right? And it's not about, absolutely, people choose schools for different reasons. But that is a lot of money that's being stripped from public school systems with more and more and more mandates. We're required to do less. And I, unlike what was said, have talked to our state legislators many times about this. There are some that have a different view, unfortunately. So with that, I would like to leave on a more positive note in saying, welcome back, everybody. It's going to be a great year. Let's make it a great year together, and we'll continue to keep improving. Thank you. Okay, so the board will meet in regular session on Monday, August 26th of 2024 at 6 p.m. at the Early Learning Center. That is here, 936 Eastwind Drive, Westerville, Ohio, 43081. And with that, may I have a motion to enter executive session for the purpose of considering the employment and compensation of public employees?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Marshall?
Dr. Nestor Baker?
Yes.
Mrs. Valentine?
Yes.
Mrs. Davidson?
Yes.
Mrs. Meyer?
Yes. You're welcome to stick around if you would so like to. Otherwise, thank you for coming. Okay, we have returned from executive session, and may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved?
Second.
Ms. Marshall, will you take the vote?
Mrs. Davidson?
Yes.
Mrs. Valentine?
Yes.
Dr. Nestor Baker?
Yes.
Mrs. Meyer?
Yes. Thank you.